creepy and geeky. Welcome to the Double Feature Podcast of Horror and More. I'm your host, Robert, and today is my 50th episode. To celebrate the occasion, we're going to be talking about a couple of movies with shock endings, April Fool's Day and Sleepaway Camp. Joining me for this celebration are my two most frequent guests, my daughter Katrina and Donna from the Dawn of the Dead podcast. Welcome back to the show, ladies.
Woo. Yay!
All right, that was a little lackluster. You guys could do better.
I mean, nobody wanted to go first. We didn't
I know.
Yeah, I was like, you get what you get, man.
Yeah, I know. Well, being that it's my 50th episode, I figured this would be a great opportunity to have both of you on. Plus, this is actually one of the first episodes Katrina and I talked about doing. When we originally talked about doing the podcast, it was going to be her and I was going to be introducing her to horror movies that she'd never seen. And this was one of them. I just thought it was an interesting combination because of the shocking endings on both of them. They're both kind of little twist endings. And I just thought, and she watched them and she was like, okay, yes, that would be a great episode to do. And we just kept kicking it down the hill because, you know, Katrina's just super busy all the time with work and school. And then I was going to do it without Katrina. And that's when I talked to Donna, and Donna said she would love to do it. And so now I'm just combining the two. So just seemed like the best way to do this, especially for the 50th episode.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
And by the way, I am proud of you for getting to the 50th episode.
Thank you. It's been a lot of hard work for sure.
It's always
especially
fun,
trying to put
though.
stuff out weekly. Oh, thank
you. Putting stuff out weekly. I don't know how you do it. Like, I'm doing weekly episodes recapping The Last of Us, and that's killing me. I usually do every other week because I just don't have enough time to focus. But
right.
I'm glad that you picked these too. I typically call these the Scooby-Doo endings. Well, more so April Fools than
April
Sleepaway
Fools.
Camp.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's definitely that Scooby-Doo. Like what? So I will let whoever wants to start. I will let you know I have a ton of crushes in this. Katrina, you've never met me. I am a totally bisexual lady, so I am crushing on every motherfucker in this movie. That's all I'm gonna say about that.
I love it.
And I will let you know why when I get to them. But go ahead. Who wants to start?
All right. Yeah. You know, whoever wants to start, let's jump right into April Fool's Day.
All right. I'd prefer to go after whoever starts.
Well, okay. So I will start.
I like bouncing off of people. So.
I will start it. So this movie, this is one of those movies that I never caught in the 80s.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it totally slipped my radar. I don't know why I never saw it, but it just never popped up. That being said, it's filled with people from other 80s movies that I did watch and watched a lot of in the 80s. Like, you know, just one of the guys, Back to the Future. Oh God. Now I can't even think of the other
Friday
movies.
the 13th part 2.
Friday the 13th part 2. Yeah. Summer School. So all of
Valley
those movies
Girl.
I'd seen more than once. Yeah. So I'd seen all of those movies more than once, but I'd never seen April Fool's Day. And then I'm watching April Fool's Day, you know, just a couple of years ago, and I'm like, holy shit. Like, I know all of these people. So anyway, it was an interesting, it was like this weird, like 80s mix of like side characters. Cause like none of them were ever truly like the main character. Right?
No.
You could maybe say Amy Steele from Friday the 13th.
Friday the 13th part 2. Yeah.
But other than that, you know, it was just like, what? This is like weird. So Donna, go ahead.
So I guess we should start out by saying we've got a group of people that are on a ferry, and they're
Yes.
kind of videotaping and just kind of getting to know all of these different characters. And you're right, like other than Amy Steele, none of them really. Well, I would say Deborah Foreman, because she was in Valley Girl, and I think
Yeah. Yeah.
Waxworks. She was in a few other movies, but they're saying all of these things, and I love how we have the one character who's talking about how she went to convent school, and
Yeah.
all of these really wholesome things, and then she's like, "I'm not fuss on the first date, April Fools," and I'm like, okay, this is letting us know that this is, obviously we're gonna have a lot of pranks.
Yeah.
But I love how everybody just has a certain, she's obviously the more, I don't want to say loose, but she's obviously the more lascivious person, which I gravitated to right away. Um, and then you've got Amy Steele, who's, she's more of the wholesome. When I saw
Kind
her,
of
I was like,
uptight.
oh, yeah, kind of uptight, rigid. And I always felt like when I saw her, I was like, oh, she's going to be the final girl. She's definitely going to, she has the final
Right.
girl face. And I have a
And she'd already
massive
been a
crush on
final girl
her.
too. So
Exactly. I have a massive crush on her too. So, um, but then you see everybody doing all of these things on this ferry as they're going to what we find out is one of their friends. Their friend Buffy has a island home. Clearly, these people are pretty well to do, or at least some of them are. And she's invited them there for a weekend. And so things are happening on this ferry. As we get there, we get to know, like I said, all of these characters. And then, dun dun dun, something horrific happens. Um, Katrina, I'm not gonna talk all night. Now you're gonna talk too.
Oh, I
uh,
know. Usually
so
quiet.
yeah. So yeah. So I mean, that starts it off. It starts off kind of quietly, kind of quietish, just kind of getting to meet the people and everything like that. And then, this incident happens. One of the characters gets stabbed and falls off the boat. They dive in, they try to go after him, and he comes up perfectly fine and showing that it was a prank. He wasn't stabbed, it was just all a joke, which sets off the whole rest of the movie. This whole movie is filled with lots of weird pranks going on and just general buffoonery. But it gets dark once nighttime comes, and shit starts to get weird. So some of the characters are confronted by things from their past popping up, like little news articles or whatever. There's like weird drug paraphernalia in a cabinet. Like there's just weird shit going on in this house, and so everybody's just having a weird night. And then the next morning, Muffy's down there. Muffy is the lady whose house they're all at. And she's a little bit more disheveled than you would think. She's kind of crazy haired and crazy eyed and acting weird and erratic, and things go downhill from there. People start dropping like flies. So but there's still this silly fun tone to the whole movie. It reminds me a lot of Clue in a way.
Yeah.
Not fully, but because Clue is definitely played even more for laughs. But whereas this one's trying to play it a little bit more seriously.
I always thought, well, because I was a teen in the 80s, and yes, I'm that old. I watched this movie a lot, and it always made me think of an Agatha Christie novel, and then there were none, and with a little bit of Clue,
They
because
actually mention Agatha Christie in the
they
movie.
do, yeah. Nan, I think that
Yeah.
her name, said that, oh, it's right out of Agatha Christie, because they got the little dolls that represent them, and then they start disappearing. And I thought that was kind of cool, because that's exactly what would happen in the Agatha Christie mystery. You go to some secluded location, and then you're, fucking 86th.
Yeah, no, it's definitely got that Agatha Christie kind of Clue vibe. I think that there's I think in part because I think this movie came out in 86,
Mhm.
which would have been about a year after Clue
Mm.
came out. And they, oh, yeah, 86. Um, so maybe they were trying to capitalize a little bit on that, make it more like make a similar vibe to Clue, but because Clue did okay, it didn't do super great. But maybe they were thinking, hey, let's do a version of this that's more kind of like this is kind of actually kind of a mix between The Big Chill and Clue. You
Mhm.
get a group of friends together, which is totally The Big Chill, for this, weekend party thing, and then people start to die off. It's fun though. It's it's one of those movies that like I said, I didn't see growing up. It was one of those ones that I found later. And sometimes going back and watching some of the stuff, especially stuff in the 80s or earlier or whatever, is real hit or miss for me. But this one actually, was really good and I enjoyed it a lot. What about you, Katrina? Being that you are much younger and had never seen it before.
Um, so the first time I watched it, I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, why is this all happening? There wasn't any like singular person who was like, oh, maybe it's this person that's doing it. It was just kind of like they were just dying. And
Yeah,
there
it didn't
wasn't any
feel like a
rhyme.
typical
Yeah, there wasn't
slasher.
any
Yeah.
rhyme or reason. So I was just like, what? Why? And then all the Muffy's stuff started like coming together kind of towards the middle of the movie. And I was like, oh, so like these things are connecting with this thing and that thing is happening because of that. And it's just like, but still again, why? And so then it goes to the end and I'm just like, oh, I see. It's like it kind of just like it's funny, but then you're confused for a moment when she steps through that door in the kitchen.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
you're just kind of
Yeah.
confused for a moment. You're just like,
Right.
what?
No, and that's what, and let's get to it. That's the shock ending. Amy Steele's character Kit, she's trying to get away from, you know, what we thought was Muffy, but turns out to be Buffy, her
Her twin.
twin sister who is institutionalized, who's escaped. And so she's trying to get away from her, runs through these dining room doors into the den area. And all the people who were supposedly killed earlier in the movie are all alive, just sitting there talking to each other, drinking, whatever, just kind of ignoring her. And they're like, she's like, what the fuck is going on? And as an audience member, you're like, yeah, what the fuck is going on?
going on?
Like, how is everybody alive? What is going on?
What the hell?
And turns out it was all just a very big April Fool's Day prank. But was also Muffy, who was pretending to be her not really twin sister, Buffy, had concocted this whole thing as a test of a murder mystery weekend style thing for this house that she's inheriting from her mother, and she wants to turn it into this like resort murder mystery resort thing.
Yeah.
And so
I mean, it's smart.
no,
Mhm.
it is. She had to trust that everybody would go along with this though,
Yeah.
because the thing is that every person who got killed, quote killed through the movie, then basically had to agree to just hide or do whatever they needed
It
to
kind
do
of reminds
to
me of
keep
like
the joke
sharks and
going.
minnows, like where there's one shark and then minnow gets caught and then that minnow becomes another shark. You know, like the old kid game.
No, I don't know that.
I don't
Well,
either.
okay. Well, there's a kid game called Sharks and Minnows where there's one kid who's a shark and then everyone else is a minnow and then whatever kids who are minnows get caught turn into sharks and then they have to catch the last minnow.
Ah,
I don't know what the point is for the minnows. I don't know if it's just to escape from the sharks or what, but it kind of reminded me of that because it's just Muffy at the beginning and obviously her twin. And
yes,
then
because she
and
does have
then
a twin. It's
as
just a twin
yeah,
brother.
yeah,
Right.
but they lie. So,
Yeah.
so it's I don't know, it kind of reminded me of that where they kind of get caught along with it as it goes on. So
The one thing that kind of, and I love this movie, don't get me wrong, I own it, but the one thing that always kind of bugs me about it is that when she says she has a twin and then she points to I can't remember the O'Neill kid, Griffin O'Neill, who's her
Yeah.
twin. It would seem like if they went to college, they would know that Muffy had a twin brother if they were
Right.
close
yeah.
friends. That's the only thing that kind of was like, what the fuck? How do y'all not know this woman has a brother? You went to college with her for
Okay,
four
well,
years.
personally, there's a person who works at my work who apparently has a twin sister, and they've been working there for like 6 months now, and I didn't know. So it's possible that you could go that long without knowing. But that's
I
also
I mean,
work and not friendships. But
I can overlook it because I love this fucking movie. I really can, but I find that kind of bullshit.
Well,
But
I think to be fair, I think a lot of them actually, I think a lot of them actually say that they all don't know her super well. That
so
they're
they
all
go to
friends
school
with
with her,
her.
but they don't know her.
They, yeah. I mean,
I,
I don't know. I'm
I
just
mean,
saying that
maybe
none of
it's
them
just
seem to
my.
know her super well enough that like none of them are super close to her. None of them are like best friends with her or anything.
But like
So
the Hal character, how he, he's already researched this woman, like to know that
yeah,
her father has some kind of. He would, I would think I mean, of
he
course,
should have known.
Google wasn't
Yeah,
a thing then, but
but a rich
um,
family, you would suspect that you would hopefully know that she had a brother or something like that.
yeah.
Yeah,
But I
yeah,
let it go because I love the fucking movie. I mean, once again,
yeah,
um, and the one thing I really do love about this film, I rewatched it recently because we were going to talk about it, and I just realized how overly feminist this movie was. I never paid attention to it before. Um, we've got Muffy, who's basically a slasher. So we have a female slasher.
yeah.
Other than Mrs. Voorhees, I don't think we had one at that time. Um,
Oh,
and and then we also have Amy Steele, who once again is playing the final girl role, but her boyfriend's the one that's shrieking in a cupboard, and
yeah,
she's actually manning up, so to speak, to do battle with this chick. Um, and there's also that scene where they're in the boathouse, her and her boyfriend, and she's like really sexually aggressive. I thought that was pretty cool. I was like, oh shit, I didn't
yeah,
even think about that. It's a
yeah.
joke,
No,
played for jokes, but she clearly was the more male person in that relationship.
yeah. No, I would agree that by and large, like the women in this movie seem to be more, yeah, more in control than a lot of the other, a lot of other movies maybe of this time. I mean, Nikki, also, she's the more free and open girl, and she's like, she's with Chaz, but also still kind of being open towards Hal, and so, and Chaz is just like, okay, whatever, and so
Yeah.
he, so it's this interesting situation where the women are very much in their own power for the most part.
Yeah,
And
even the part where she wants to go getting the water from the well. I mean, she's willing to go down into the well. And usually that's when the guy steps in and goes, no, we won't have any of that. I'll go down there. And
yeah,
she's like, I'm a modern woman. I can do this shit, and she just goes down there. She sees a bunch of floating heads, but she goes
yeah,
down there. But I really enjoyed seeing those women. Like you said, all of the female characters were very empowered. Like
right,
they weren't being victims in the sense that we normally see. Even when
right.
Nikki goes in there and is kind of, like you said, kind of flirting with Hal, and um, I don't know. I never noticed it. Maybe as a teen I wasn't hip to that, but I noticed it when I watched it recently. It was pretty cool.
even
Yeah,
Nan is like not into art and Chaz's advances. Like they're just kind of like she's not having any of it.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Like when he comes up and he's like, oh yeah, here, like this is what I'm studying, this porno book, and she's like, yeah, I'm
Yeah.
studying actually like real stuff. Like,
Yeah.
so, but yeah, it's a, you know, she like, so like every woman character in this is very much, you know, of their own power and holding their own against the men in every circumstance. None of them are really like, you know, shrinking to them or deferring to them at all. They're all very powerful women in their own right the whole time. So that was nice
Yeah,
to see.
even the fact that Muffy has this idea of having a murder mystery weekend, she orchestrated everything herself, other than
Yeah.
the people she had a hand in, which is pretty goddamn impressive. I mean,
Yeah.
it worked.
Yeah. Yeah. And the, you know, and then we get the last ending of this movie, which is, you know, this weird like moment where she's attacked and you think she's being killed by somebody, and it turns out that it's Nan, but Nan is messing with her too, but sort of in this weird actual kind of revenge thing, that because you know this was one of those moments that earlier that was used against Nan, like I said, there were some newspaper clippings, and one of them was about how Hal had this car accident that killed people, and how Nan had had an abortion, and you know, which really hurt her, you know, to, you know, that's something personal
Right.
and everything that was hers, and she didn't want other people to know about, and you know, to have that used like weaponized against her even for a joke, was cruel. And um you know, so that part of it, and you know, Muffy apologizes later, you know, is just like, yeah, I'm sorry, some of those were maybe a little bit too much, but you know, you can see Nan over there in the corner still stewing about it.
Yeah, very
And
stoic. Her face is very
yeah,
like hardened, and you can tell that went way too far.
yeah. And so you get that ending with her like, you know, fake slashing, you know, Muffy's neck, but you know, it's just more of a, I think it was kind of like a, yeah, don't fuck with me because this time it was
Yeah,
fake, the
Yeah.
next time it might not be.
right.
So it's an interestingly weird, like kind of intense end to this movie that has been kind of, at least by the end, like just before that, had kind of let the air out of all the suspense and everything, and had kind of let the audience come down into, you know, oh, okay, this was all just fake. So
Yeah.
it's just a weird more intense ending. So,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I don't think I was expecting that. And then when I saw it, I think I literally jumped out of my skin because I was like, oh shit, she's really gonna die and people are gonna think it's a joke, they're not gonna
yeah,
realize it.
yeah.
But then, we see Nan come out there. And I will say it also harkened back to the opening credits where I'm assuming it
Hmm.
was Muffy that had the little Jack in the Box where the monster
Mhm.
popped out and she kept kind of wanting to open it, and then when that moment happened, that's when she gets that fake slash. And it always creeped me out. Like that was just like, holy shit. Oh, okay, she's fine.
Yeah, yeah. No, it's definitely a weird ending, but it works. I mean, you know, overall, yeah, you know, given the context of the movie.
I can tell you, some people I know, I have arguments about this movie because they were like, it's such a horrible fake out. It's so stupid. The name of the fucking movie is April Fool's Day. What did you think you were going to get?
Yeah. No, yeah, if you go into this and you get mad at the ending like that, then you're just dumb. So like, and I'm calling you all out, you're dumb.
Yeah, that's dumb as hell. Like the movie,
You know.
it tells you, mofo. It tells you what the name of the movie. Oh my God. So I do have to ask both of you, have you ever seen the April Fool's Day remake?
No.
No. I didn't know there was a remake.
It's trash.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm just throwing it out there. It was one they made in 2008, and then there was like, this whole brother and sister wanting to inherit money, and it's terrible. I wouldn't waste 90 minutes that it is on it, but they did make one, just not a good one.
Yeah, yeah, it seems pretty typical.
Yeah,
It's
remakes. I don't think this movie needed a remake. I think it was fine on its own. I don't
I
think that.
agree with you.
well, and I think if you're going to remake something, like you need to, so I'm always of two minds about remakes, because like I have no problem with people making remakes, because it never takes away from the original. There's lots of terrible, terrible remakes that I'll probably never watch again. But it's once in a while it's interesting to see one of them, because just in case they bring something new or interesting to the overall story. It doesn't happen all that often, but you get something like an Evil Dead um, uh, in 2013, that remake slash reboot, whatever, requel. That one, is arguably really good. But then you get a lot, because the horror industry is rife with terrible, terrible remakes. But you get something like, on one hand, you get a Friday the 13th remake, a reboot that's actually pretty good. But then you get a Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which is really, really bad.
Mhm.
So it's just, you can never tell, and I would argue that at least with like Friday the 13th, that's worth watching. Nightmare on Elm Street, not so much. But so as much as there's terrible ones, there are some good ones out there, and it's always worth at least attempting to watch a few of them just to see, and you never have to watch it again. So
Yeah,
I
I
am
mean, that's my
curious. I'll have to
only
look it up
reason.
at least.
That was my only reason for watching it. I was like, well, maybe it'll be at least another little fun, poke at it. And it wasn't. It was just like, it felt like it was a WB franchise type of film. It was not worth it. And Scout, I can't remember her name, Scout Taylor
Scout Taylor Compton. Yeah.
She's in it. And I was like, oh, okay, I'll just check it out. Nope. It wasn't for me. But if you watch it, let me know what you think about it. Or if anybody's listening and watches it, let me know what you think about it. Because that's not it, Chief. That's not for me.
Yeah. Yeah. No. I think this movie, like Katrina said, I think it stands well enough on its own that you really don't need a sequel. I think it works really well for its time period. It's just, I think you could make a good sequel, or not sequel, but a good a remake out of this. Fairly easily. It's not like it's hard to do. But you just have to have the same tone.
Yeah, you have to
and I
keep
think
the
that's
essence of what the original is about.
Yeah, you have to have that lighter tone that mixes well with the murders happening and everything, and it's hard to do. So for some people,
and it would be nice if they did make a decent remake that they brought a lot of these actors back, because it would be nice to see them.
Yeah, that'd be a good way to do it. I know a couple of them. When reading up on this, I know like a couple of the lady actors have now retired, just full on retired from working, so they don't really do much anymore. But it's it is fun to go back and watch this, because it's like I was talking to Katrina earlier when we were watching it, and it's got Biff from Back to the Future, and it's fun to see him, because I think when in Back to the Future he plays such a kind of a one note villain. He's just the bully. There's no real nuance to him, at least in the first movie. And then in this one, he's playing a fun guy. He's just a funny fun guy, and it's a much different character than you see him in Back to the Future. So it's this weird thing to see him, like, because a lot of the other ones, like the guy who plays Chaz, he's a character in Chaz and Nikki are actually in the same movie together. They were in Just One of the Guys.
Just One of the Guys, yeah.
Yeah, which I loved as a kid.
Clayton Ronner. Oh my God. I love him.
Yeah, Just One of the Guys is a great movie. That's a fun movie. And kind of, at times a very feminist movie as well. And so it's fun. It was fun to see a lot of these people. The guy who played oh man, I can't remember his name. But the guy that was in Summer School, he plays Amy Steele's boyfriend in this.
Oh, right.
Yeah,
he did. I forgot that he was the stripper.
He's the stripper, yeah, in Summer School.
Oh my gosh.
And I used to watch
But
summer
you
school all
see
the
what I
time.
mean when they're in
Yeah.
this movie, he really is like the what would be considered a woman role because he's like, pouting that his grades weren't
Yeah.
good and he just
Yeah.
never really just comes there to have fun. He's just wanting to make it all about him. And I was just like, dude, if you don't shut the fuck up about your grades right now, just chill. Just it's okay to not be perfect for 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Um, I'm curious how this movie would have gone if they had a black person on this island. I always think when I watch
Yeah.
these horror movies and there aren't people of color, I always go, how long would I last in that movie?
Well, in the 80s,
Like
you probably would have been the first one to be killed
I
off.
would have been
So,
I would have been the one on the ferry.
yeah. Yeah. Oh, man.
Very
Yeah, you
funny.
probably would have been the ferry. You probably would have been the ferry driver or something. It was just
Yeah,
been
I
like,
would have been the ferry driver, and then I would have had to come there, and they'd probably make me do some voodoo shit or something. That'd be
oh,
fun. I mean, it was the '80s, That's all.
yeah.
That's all they had. So
God, the 80s is full of that voodoo shit. Jesus, the 70s and 80s, like just they
'70s
pulled
and
that.
'80s, rampant. We're rampant with that shit.
Oh man, it's ridiculous. Like voodoo was everywhere. Oh man, I think the interesting thing is I think once Wes Craven made Serpent and the Rainbow, which was truly all about that Haitian voodoo, um,
Right.
you know,
Way more in depth.
yeah. And so once he kind of went in depth in that and made that movie, you kind of didn't see it as much. You saw it in bits and pieces here and there, but like once he made like a movie about that, like specifically about it, and it wasn't just a plot contrivance, that it seemed to kind of taper off a little bit. So you definitely don't see it as much. You saw it a little bit in the 90s, I guess, with like Angel Heart and stuff like that. So just weird, man.
It is a little weird, but absolutely, I love this movie. I cannot tell you guys how many times I've watched this. It's a staple in my house. We watch it every April Fool's Day, whether people want to watch it or not. I have it on, and it's one of my favorite ones. And I also grew up in a house where Agatha Christie was a big thing. So for me, this was like a more modern, and then there were none. My mom didn't really like it the first time she watched it, but the more she watched it, the more she really got into it.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah. I think Katrina's watched at least one of the new Agatha Christie ones.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Death on the Nile. But to be fair, I did. It was a late night screening, so I definitely didn't watch the full thing because I was asleep. So I really only woke up when the gunshots were going off because it was in a Dolby, so it was like really loud.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, so I would like wake up when there was a gunshot and then see what was going on the screen and then go like, okay, I got it, and then fall back asleep.
Yeah, it doesn't help that her movie theater has the recliners, so
Oh man, it's
real
so
easy to fall
comfy.
asleep in.
Yeah.
Holy crap.
Yeah. So, all right. Yeah. So let's go ahead and transition to Sleepaway Camp. I know Katrina has some stuff she wants to talk about this one. So this one was another one of those that I had never seen until the last few years. And everybody talked about it, and everybody's like, "Oh my god!" And I knew the twist because everybody had talked about it so much. And to be fair, I mean, it had been like close to 40 years by the time I'd watched it, so I couldn't hate on anybody for spoiling the ending for me. But so I watched it, and I was like, okay. Like the first time I watched it, I was like, okay, this movie's just kind of meh. Like the twist is like the only thing that kind of saves it, and and that's barely that at all. And so I wasn't huge on it, but like upon rewatches, because I've watched it a couple of times since, I've become not a fan, but I've become like better at it. I think it's better than I thought it was the first time. So what about you, Donna?
I mean, I was the same way. I had the twist was already ruined for me. I did see this back in the day, but it wasn't one that I couldn't understand why people made such a big deal about it. And over the years, it's growing on me. But it's still not like in my top tier of horror films.
Oh yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's
No,
definitely nowhere
for
near
sure.
top tier.
I think it's because of the subjects that are in it. Some of them they give me a kind of an ick factor.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So I think that might be why I'm just like, you know, and I know it was the 80s. There's a
Yeah.
crappy song that goes, it was acceptable for the 80s.
Yeah.
And it's not, I mean, I guess, but it shouldn't have been, you
No,
know?
no, yeah.
Um, but I will say, you know, for a slasher film, I'm one of these people. I like seeing unconventional kills. So
Yeah.
they got that shit down perfect.
Oh
Like
yeah.
there's a
Yeah.
kill in there to this day that it hurts my lady parts, and I'm just
Oh,
like,
yeah.
bro,
Yeah.
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 I've never felt so much pain and not ever had that happen. It scares me. It scarred
You
me.
don't even see it, but
You didn't
it's
even
still no.
see it.
It's the mental picture.
So now I understand when people see, you know, when guys see guys getting hit in the nuts. I know what I can understand that now after seeing that movie. I'm like, oh shit, no.
Yeah, I still
Um,
think that's even way worse than getting hit in the nuts. And
it's
that's from a guy who's
horrible.
Oh
gotten hit in the
yeah.
nuts.
Oh
Oh
my
Yeah.
yeah. Not
god.
even comparable, but
No, no, no,
No.
no. No.
I'm just like, ugh, I've never but the kills had me. Like that I
Yeah.
really do appreciate the different ways of dispatching people in this movie.
very creative.
And I also missed the crop tops, guys wearing crop
Oh my
tops in the
god.
80s.
Same. I put that in my letterbox review. I was like, why don't men wear crop tops and short shorts anymore? Because it was a
That
look. Like,
shit
come
is
on.
that's a goddamn blessing right there. I grew up in the 80s, girl. Oh my god. I'm just saying.
When men do it nowadays, everybody's like, "Oh my God, breaking gender norms!" Like, people will talk about Harry Styles wearing crop tops and like be like, "Oh my God, he's so brave!" Like, what?
Just watch a few
What?
80s horror movies.
Yeah,
You'll see
seriously.
Yeah, no, 80s horror movies at camps, man, all the guys were wearing crop tops. You know,
crop
watch the
tops,
Friday the
short
13th
shorts.
series.
Yeah, crop tops,
Yeah.
short shorts. They all have, you know, body hair. Everything's everywhere.
Yeah,
Yeah.
nothing is groomed. Like, please,
No.
Yeah.
can we get back to that level of freedom, please? For God's sake.
I second that motion. I do.
Yeah.
So what are we how are we starting? I started the last one. I'm not doing this one.
I'll let Katrina start with this one.
Okay,
Woohoo!
so when I initially watched this back like a couple years ago, when we were just starting to get the idea of what we wanted to do for the podcast, I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like, like genuinely, like this is even more off the rails than April Fool's Day was, because at least April Fool's Day was like, okay, people are dying, we don't really know what's going on. But like Sleepaway Camp was, people are dying, but what the fuck? Like there is no rhyme or reason for that. Like you could kind of get like, okay, all the bullies are dying, like all these people are the ones who are basically picking on Ricky and Angela are the ones that are getting hurt the most. But why? Like, why is Angela so weird? Why? Okay, can we talk about the fucking pedophile cook?
Thank you. That's what I'm talking about. The ick factor. The ick factor.
Like,
No,
what the
this
fuck was
movie
that scene?
This movie is full of, well, and not only that, so not only was he a gross pedophile, like just ew, like even just like he's at one point describing things, and all of the little like assistant cooks all around him are just like, you're gross, but they don't, like, other than saying, oh, you're kind of gross, they don't do anything about it.
You know,
Yeah,
like
You know,
I'm,
like, they
I'm
just
into true
accept
crime,
it.
and so like I'm into true crime, so like I hear about all these fucking things that happened in the 80s, and I'm like, you know why all these things happened? Because movies were playing this shit and nobody wanted to talk about it. Like,
Yeah, it's like his coworkers laugh it off, like, "Oh, you're so silly," you know, like, bro, no.
no, that's not silly. No.
Yeah. Now this whole movie has weird shit like that, like the camp counselor Meg, who wants to go like on
Who
a
wants to
date
hook
with
up with the guy that's
Mel.
old as her grandfather? I'm
Yeah,
like,
and then
what?
that guy the entire time is like, no, nothing's going on. Let's just forget about it when kids are literally dying.
Yeah.
Yeah, because he
But
doesn't want the
meanwhile,
camp to
he's
get a bad reputation. And I'm like, are you fucking shitting me?
yeah. Oh
Jesus.
man. Yeah. And this
Yeah.
was the 80s. So I mean, this
Yeah.
honestly, this is the sad thing, Katrina. This isn't really that out of the norm for what was going on in the 80s. And prior to the 80s.
Yeah.
But this is the kind of
Really.
stuff that was in movies that eventually people started kind of waking up to, and people over the course of the 80s and 90s and stuff, people were just like, you know what, this is not good. Maybe we need to transition away from this shit and
Mhm.
move towards one, better storytelling, and two, a better society.
Yeah,
So,
thank fuck for that.
yeah.
I mean, it's horrible. The one thing I will say that is at least somewhat groundbreaking is that we got to see a gay couple with their children, but then
Yeah.
something horrific happens to them after we see them.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
that part I was like, oh, okay, that's not the norm, but okay, I'm here for it. And then, like 5 seconds after we see that they're a family, we get a tragedy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's
And the interesting thing about that too was that like they were played not as some kind of sick perversion either. They were just shown as a loving couple.
Right.
In the moments that we do get to see them, they aren't shown like later on, you get a weird little
dream
backstory
sequence.
montage dream sequence thing. And you see that, they were a loving couple, and it wasn't something that was just, maybe at the time the movie came out, people were like, ew, whatever, but at least the filmmakers weren't making it seem to be something grosser than it was.
Yeah, that's probably the most progressive thing about this movie is that, even when the kids saw them and even when the kids saw them in bed together, it's just like when you see your parents in
Yeah,
bed
that's a
together.
normal reaction to
Right, like you just kind of giggle and go about your business,
Yeah.
But yeah, the ick factor is high. The camp counselor wanting to hook up with the dude that's old enough to be uh, I,
Yeah.
I can't. I can't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't with this movie.
I
And
have
why
to
are these
fast
mean
forward.
girls so mean? Like
Yeah, like
the one
why
No,
are
no,
they
no, no,
so
no.
mean towards
Yeah.
them?
Because
Like, what is
okay,
the point?
I have to talk about this one scene that I remember.
Mhm.
Judy comes up to Angela and Paul and goes, "Well, isn't it the two lovebirds?" And then Paul's like, "Fuck off." And then Judy's just like, "Whatever," and then leaves. And she's just by herself and just comes up to them and berates them. Like, what the fuck was that? Like, there's okay, bullies don't bully just for their own gratification. They do it to get other people to see them bully, to get that approval from other people. So why the
Generally
fuck
speaking, but also
generally
I've had bullies who were like this though. So we're just
true,
shitty people,
but for the
Judy is just a
most
shitty
part,
person.
yeah. It's just like why even go up to them, say that, and then walk away? And then
Yeah.
immediately after that, Meg walks up and literally assaults Angela.
Yeah.
Like, what?
Yeah. No, viewing this from a lens from today, this movie has so many like so much going wrong for it. And then but for some reason in the 80s, this was mostly okay to put on screens. Um
As long as it's rated R, people don't really give a shit.
Like I keep telling you guys, the kills are that's the saving grace in this for me.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
because there's so many different ways that they're being killed, and
Yeah.
that was probably the only thing that was keeping me even somewhat paying attention to this. And the dialogue, some of the dialogue, I just love to this day because I think there's one crop top macho guy out there, and he's like, eat shit and die, Ricky. And Ricky's like, eat shit and live.
She lived.
Yeah.
And I was like, yes, I will remember that line the rest of my life. That's worse than eat shit and die. Come on now. It's like beautiful, beautiful dialogue right there. I can't help it but love it. And I love the fact that Ricky is so protective of Angela, which
Yeah.
leads me to, well, we're getting to the twist, but does that mean that Ricky already knew what Angela was about, or did he not know?
For
Yes, he does know. I'm this is because he grew up with her. And so that because Ricky is the son of Aunt Martha, right? Her Aunt Martha.
Right, but I mean, he's the cousin, right? So
Yeah.
He's her cousin, yeah.
But he would have
he's Angela.
known at least that there were two other like people, like two other cousins, and that he probably knew
because
that one of
Angela,
them
after
lived
the
and was coming
accident,
over, and then the mom was like, "No, we're going to
yes, because
get
what
into
happened
this."
is, what happens is, from what I understand, is that Angela went to go live with Aunt Martha and Ricky after the death.
Yeah.
Um, that's how I always saw it. Um, which was confusing because the other dad was still alive, I thought. So,
But
so
most
but
likely,
maybe
most likely didn't have any legal binding because
right.
that's what I'm thinking
it's,
too.
It's never
Probably.
fully explained. And so she has to go live with Aunt Martha, and Aunt Martha's like, well, we already have a boy. Aunt Martha is not fucking right in the head. I'm gonna lay this out here.
No, she needs
right
to be put into an institution and stay there.
She was fucked in the head completely. Like, I don't know what's going on with that lady, but she was like, it's so weird. And the performance is just bizarre too.
The performance is creepy, you know. Oh, and I put
Yeah.
this around my finger so I wouldn't forget. That's why I did this. And I'm just like, holy shit, lady, you're creeping up my night.
It's at the beginning of the movie. Like, can we like get to the story before we get introduced to this fucking batshit crazy lady, please?
It's just so bizarre. But yeah, I think, Ricky and Angela grew up for the next several years together. And meanwhile, Aunt Martha had transitioned Angela from being a boy into being a girl. And so like forcibly transitioned her.
Yes.
Which is so problematic. And so you can see why Angela would be quiet and withdrawn and everything, and didn't want to have anything to do with anybody. Because this feels like this is like her first time being out in the world.
Yeah, that's how it came across to me. And I will say, I really did love the way Ricky was so protective of her.
Yeah.
He really was very devoted to her, and I'm sure that was to keep protecting the secret that she had, but it just seemed genuinely like he cared enough to make sure that she did not get hurt.
Right. Yeah. He did everything in his power to do it. I mean, it doesn't help that the everybody from top down just did not give a fuck and was like actively like messing with her. It's like, why? Leave the quiet girl alone. She doesn't want to participate. Just let her sit out. Like, who cares? It's not hurting anybody, So
yeah, and I can honestly say summer camp is brutal. Like,
yes.
it's like I never liked summer camp, and I was the Angela. I mean, I don't have a penis, but I was very much very much the quiet girl. I didn't really, as an only child, I mostly hung around adults. So when I was around a lot of kids, I wasn't, either they bored me or I thought they were stupid. So, I I fully got the brunt of a lot of this. Why don't you want to go in the water? Just leave, like you said, leave the quiet motherfuckers alone, because that's not your problem. Just leave me alone, homie.
But why is the quiet existence bothering you? It's literally not even in your way. Like, just leave us alone.
Yeah, I kind of, as I got older, I kind of really got comfortable with that. And I felt like, I'm sorry that you're uncomfortable with quiet, but maybe silence bothers you. That's not my problem,
Yeah.
But this movie, for whatever reason, horror fans, and I don't hate it. I like I said, it's grown on me over the years, but there's just so much ick factor to it. And I'm sure if I go back to a lot of horror movies in the 80s, I'll find all of the ick factor. But this one was just way over the top.
This one seems really, really icky in so many ways. And it is really surprising how much love this movie gets.
I mean, the whole idea of him, having her in a locked pantry and about to pull his pants down. And I'm like, what world would they not fire this man? And the guy's like, "What are you doing in here? Don't come in here." And I'm like,
Yeah.
I mean, if the
nobody's gonna
camp
stop
counselor
this
doesn't
guy.
want bad publicity, then firing a pedophile would be bad publicity. So,
Oh my gosh, terrible.
Yeah. Yeah. I have a feeling that for the most part, I think that most people really like this movie for a couple of reasons. One is of course the shock ending where we find out that Angela's a really a boy underneath everything, and had been forcibly transitioned. And two, that a lot of the performances, at least with some of the kids like Judy and some of the other ones, can border on camp. And so I think that because she's very much this arch bully, this very stereotypical bully, like bullying for like Katrina said, for honestly almost no reason other than just that she just likes being a bully. And so I think that there's it's this weird, there's I think it's just because it is so weird. I think that's why people like it, because there's this whole contingent of people who really love weird, like dumb, badly made movies. Like I'm sorry, but Vinegar Syndrome and Severin, they put out some of the crappiest things I've ever seen. I've actually bought some in the past, and I'm always like, why did I buy this piece of crap movie? It sucks. It's not good. I always sell them because I'm just like, these suck. They're not good. But people love them, and these two businesses especially stay in business, like putting out Blu-ray and 4K copies of these really bad, terrible 80s and earlier movies, and it's just like, I don't understand why, but there's an audience for them, and I think that's where the Sleepaway Camp audience lies. It's just it's such a weird, wild movie that the shocking ending on this is pretty shocking. It's definitely not something you see often in a movie, and thankfully, rightfully so. But I do think that the performances in here, some of the performances are pretty good. I think Felissa Rose does a really good job as Angela.
She's great.
yeah,
She really is.
Yeah. And I've briefly met her at a convention later on. I didn't really get to talk to her. It was kind of more in passing, really. But I've seen her at a couple of cons, and she loves interacting with the fans, which has always been great. She seems to really like love her second like coming in horror too, because she's been popping up in a lot of indie horror and stuff over the last last decade or so. And so it's fun to see her kind of re-embracing that.
Yeah, I've always heard that she's very nice and appreciative of her fans, and
yeah.
she's always making that Angela face
The
at the
Angela
end,
face.
which is
Yeah.
which is that's creepy. We all know that they put a mask on what is it, like an 18-year-old guy to, and every time I see it, even though I know it's coming, it still creeps me out, and I think it's because of the eyes and the open mouth. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that gets under my skin so bad.
Yeah. It's creepy. Don't get me wrong. Yeah, like I think when it's close up, it's her face, and then when it pans out,
then it's the mask, and it makes a real creepy feeling. Yeah. Oh my god.
Yeah. It's such a fucking weird movie. It's just it's not bad. Like I will say, it's not overly bad. It's not one I will try to watch much more past this, probably. Now that I'm getting to talk it out and everything, but it's because like we've all said, it's very icky, it's very weird. So it's like, it's just, I don't know, it's not one of those ones I'm gonna definitely put in rotation. So anyway, was there anything else you wanted to say, Katrina? Did we miss anything?
No. I think that this movie is just insane. I think that it's jumping all over the place, and then the ending is just like, what?
Yeah. No, and I agree though. The kills are pretty good. Like we kind of talked around it a little bit, but there's a scene where the Judy character ends up supposedly getting killed. I mean, she's supposedly dead by having a curling iron
Don't
placed
talk about don't talk about it.
inside somewhere
A
not
hot curling
good.
iron. A hot
Hot
curling iron.
curling,
You got to
yeah.
say that.
Yeah. It's just not bad. And so it's funny though too because most of the time you don't see the killer throughout the whole thing, and they suspect it's Ricky, like at least Mel suspects it's Ricky the whole time it's out there killing people. And we're meant to think that it's possibly Angela or whatever, because it's always revolving around the people who bullied Angela. And at the end we do find out that it's Angela. But the moment when the door opens just before Judy gets killed, and it's supposedly Angela standing in the doorway, it's definitely Ricky with long hair. You can see it on the screen. It's so funny. I was telling Katrina about this last night. I was like, I'm pretty sure that's Ricky, just with long hair, like with a wig on.
Oh my gosh,
And
I've
so
never noticed that.
because the light is just light enough that you can kind of see his features just enough. It's still really dark, but you can kind of see that it's him. And so it's this weird, like, yeah, it's just really weird that like they went with that to kind of like do that. And who knows, maybe it was Ricky after all that did that. There's no real clarity in the whole movie. So
I mean, that's not too far fetched, though. I mean, if he's trying to
no,
protect her, that does make a lot of sense.
yeah. Well, and that's the thing too, is that it could have been both of them. Like in the end, yes, Angela did kill, Paul or whatever, but up until that point, we don't know who killed who. So
Yeah.
it could have been one, could have been both of them. So it's very unclear.
I just know, I love the kills. I love the special effects. I will have to say, the scene with the pedophile cook.
Yes.
Why the fuck was that pot so tall?
Right.
When he was doing the hot dogs, I was like, who makes this shit? I've never seen a fucking pot this tall in my life. It was almost comical, but I did like when they showed him with the burns from the hot water and how they were kind of pulsating. I thought, damn, that is some good effects right there, because that looks real. That looks like a burn.
Yeah.
Sorry, I just go back to that pot. It haunts my dreams. Like, that pot's taller than me.
Yeah, that pot is just weird. Yeah, like I've never seen anybody. I've seen some tall pots, but nothing that tall. That was definitely as tall as a small person.
It's as tall as me.
Donna sized.
Jesus, I was done. I was like, where the fuck did you buy this? Who makes this? These are the things I think about when I watch horror movies, y'all. I'm sorry.
No, you have
it
to, because
boggles my mind.
Yeah. No, I think that that's what's funny about especially if you watch a lot of horror movies, and some of them become very samey, especially slashers, so that sometimes you have to take away the funny aspects of that, the stuff that's like the comically large pot, and and the fun kills, and that's what you go to for a slasher anyway, is hopefully for some really fun, interesting kills.
Yeah, I'm there for that, especially if they're unusual or they use unconventional weapons. The guy that was in the bathroom when the beehive gets in there, I'm thinking, bro, just pick up your pants and get out. If she barred the door, whoever kind of stuck a stick in, so that, but you could slide underneath the bottom of the stall. I mean, that there wasn't like the whole thing was cordoned off that you couldn't get out. You didn't want to get out. You wanted to die, because I would have just crawled and got out of there. That would have been the end of it. But I'm thinking like a logic person, not like a person in a horror movie. So
yeah.
There's that. So anything else about these movies?
I got nothing. I think they make an interesting double feature, just in terms of shock endings. But otherwise they're like night and day to each other. I think April Fool's Day is definitely the much better movie. And people should definitely check that one out. Sleepaway Camp, y'all know the ending. You don't really need much else. So
Have y'all watched any of the sequels? Have either of you
No,
watched?
no.
I've
Okay.
seen 2 and 3. I watched them not too long ago. They finally popped up on streaming somewhere where I watched them. They're not good. They're weird. What's her name? I can't think of her name, but it's actually Bruce Springsteen's sister plays Angela in those two.
Right.
Several years later, now she's a camp counselor at this new camp. And she just starts taking out everybody for unknown reasons, just because she's psychotic. And like they play it more for laughs. In the later two movies, it's
I remember
more
the second one being more campy. Like,
yeah,
yeah.
She's definitely throughout the whole thing, you're following her as she's killing people, and she is the main character, and she's just like having fun killing people.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it's definitely a weird take. They're not horrible, but I definitely don't care to watch them again. Yeah.
I vaguely remember the second one. I don't think I ever bothered to watch the third one after I saw the second one.
The one of them, I think it's 2 or 3, has a very iconic box on it, and I remember seeing it all the time at the video store. But it's like a woman with a backpack, and on the backpack she's got Freddy's claws and Jason's mask like in it, and so it's a very iconic image from 80s video stores. But I never saw it until not too long ago. So again, it's just one of those ones that slipped past me. I wasn't a big horror person in the 80s. I watched some here and there, but I became bigger in horror just within the last few years. Anyway, all right. Just leave me hanging there, guys.
No, we're just listening.
I know. All right. Well, I think we've beat this to death. So I appreciate you both coming back on for my 50th episode. Both of you are my most frequent guests with this episode. Katrina has made it to 11 appearances, and Donna,
Woohoo!
you're at 8. So you got some catching up to do.
That sounded like a threat. What the hell?
Catch up. No. Oh man. No. So, but yes, I appreciate both of you coming on. It was a fun conversation. I'm glad we finally got to do it. I had some hiccups getting here, but got it done. Yes.
Yeah.
So
I really enjoyed talking to both of you. And I hope we can do it again. We'll have to find some more twisty ending horror movies to talk about.
Yes.
Yeah, definitely.
It'll be fun.
All right. Well, Donna, why don't you let people know where they can find you online?
So I'm pretty much on Twitter, Instagram, Donna _ the THA _ like dead as donuts, I guess. I don't know. I always try to come up with a different dead as disco, if you know what disco is. And I have my podcast is the same name, Donna the Dead Podcast. So anywhere you listen to podcasts, that's where I am.
All right. And Katrina?
So you can find me on Twitter at RCKMNKY, and then I have a pinned tweet there that has all my other socials.
All right. Sounds awesome. All right. Well, thank you both for coming on. I appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks again to Donna and Katrina for joining me for this 50th episode. Next week, I journey to that famous cabin in the woods for a 2-part look at the Evil Dead franchise. Onika J joins me to talk all about Evil Dead and Evil Dead 2. Thanks for listening. If you like what you've heard, please consider giving me 5 stars and a review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Also, please share the podcast on social media to help spread the word. Make sure to subscribe on your favorite podcast app or at creepyandgeeky.com. Music for the podcast composed by Jerry Smith. You can follow the podcast on social media at Creepy and Geeky on both Twitter and Instagram. If you'd like to follow me, I'm Geek Thulu on Twitter and geek.thulu on Instagram. You can support the podcast by ordering teas and more from the official TeePublic page, and I also have a Ko-fi page if you'd like to donate that way. All of the links are in the show notes. Finally, don't forget, stay creepy.